A Build Hatch developed production.
Hello, I'm Aaron Kyle and welcome to another episode of Build Hatch. On this week's episode of Build Hatch, I got to sit down with Tom Rolland from KL Modular Systems. Tom has a really interesting background, including a career in the fashion industry before joining a family-based business building prefabricated buildings. Like all of our guests, I really enjoyed getting to put the pieces of the puzzle together and hearing about how this rapidly growing industry is forging ahead and creating their very own niche in their part of the construction industry. Prefabricated buildings are not a new concept, but on this week's episode, you'll hear how Tom talks about form following function. And I really enjoyed this concept, listening to him talking about all the amazing things in the world of prefabrication. So watch this space. Now let's get into it. Tom Rolland from KL Modular Systems in Melbourne. Welcome to Build Hatch.
Thank you very much, mate. Good to be here.
That's good. Now, we're in Melbourne here, so your business is a prefabrication modular system type business. So tell us a little bit about KL Modular Systems.
Yeah, we're a commercial modular construction company. We've been around for about 30 years, based out in Kinglake, actually. We have 7 acres of crush rock and factories and an office up in Kinglake. And that's where we all kind of work from and where we kind of manufacture the buildings and then deliver it to all over, Victoria, South Australia and New South Wales specifically.
So pretty much most of Australia, really.
Well, yeah, at least the eastern seaboard as such. It'd be nice to keep expanding, but at the moment there's enough work for us to continue to work solely, I suppose, in Victoria as a main focus and then kind of creep into New South Wales and South Australia when we can.
So what type of prefabricated or modular buildings are we talking about?
Well, mainly the main focus for our business is the education and council sector, but it's all cut and weld steel. Mainly, we all use steel wall frames and welded steel perimeter purlins and uprights and things like that. So it's all welded out in the factory and then taken out into the yard and fit off by carpenters and sparkies and plumbers and the rest of the crew that we have out there.
So is it like prefabricated modular wall systems that just basically go together?
Not as such. It's more of like a prefabricated modular rectangle or cube. A cube, I should say, would be how it's done. So you'd get your overall building and break it up into separate modules, and then you'd weld the bases and then the roofs and then put the uprights between them and kind of make a big kind of cube or a rectangular prism as such, and then join them together almost like Lego blocks, I would say. Is the easiest way to describe it. And fortunately, having enough space out in Kinglake gives us the ability to weld them in the factory and then move them out into the yard where we can put it together as a full building for the client to come and have a look at, and also for us to kind of fit off as if we know where everything's going to be and what's going to happen, rather than it being an assembly line as such and just hoping that when it gets to site it all fits together.
So you basically put the building like 95% together on site.
In our yard. So essentially we don't really like to let the building leave our yard to the on-site part of the build until it's about 80% complete. So pretty much lock up is how we kind of leave it. When you get it to site, that's when you can kind of go, yep, sweet, it's all locked up and it's kind of a secure type of building. But in saying that at the same time, sometimes we don't have the ability to do that when the buildings become over the top architectural, or we have to do some more work on site that stops you from getting to that 80%. But we usually try and get to anywhere between 70 and 80% complete just to make it easier for everyone.
Now, I want to dive into this further shortly, but like always on Build Hatch, we always go back and find out your story and how you ended up in this position. So if I can take it back to your childhood, did you grow up in Melbourne?
Yeah, we grew up in out in Park Orchards and Ringwood area with my mum and my dad, and then they split up when I was 10 years old or something, and then we stuck around the Warrenwood type scene and grew up there. And then I've actually moved out to Essendon, Strathmore area now, so after getting married to my beautiful wife Katia. So that's where we are now. And mum's followed me back home. She grew up out in Hadfield, so mum's actually followed me up to Essendon now as well. So she actually lives around the corner. So a pretty big change from Ringwood all the way over to Essendon.
So going through school, were you sort of like a practical kid, or were you interested in going to university or getting a trade?
Yeah, no, I was never the traditional trade type kid. I didn't do TAFE. I didn't leave school early and do an apprenticeship. I did it all the way to year 12, and after that, kind of didn't really know where I wanted to go. I was really into the fashion and manufacturing industry, so I did a bachelor degree in fashion and textile manufacturing.
So what sort of fashion?
Well, mainly males fashion, essentially.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So I did a lot of work. I worked at Hugo Boss at Doncaster for about 6 years, and a few other little small boutiques in the shopping town area. And it kind of worked beautifully with the course that I was doing at the time. I had a best friend from high school that was doing it as well, and we kind of shared the experience together. And after a couple of years, I was kind of falling away from the passion that was fashion, I should say, and thought that maybe it'd be something I could do on the side rather than it being my full-time career. And I actually took a year off to kind of really figure out what I wanted to do with my future, and I ended up going back. I found that I thought I was quite a good communicator, and I ended up doing a degree in public relations.
So hang on, back to fashion.
Yeah.
Right. I want to know, because it's quite an alternative path, and
yeah.
But I'd like to know, like, when you say fashion, did you get to study how garments are made and how different materials are fabricated and put together?
Yeah, much to many of the girls' dismay, it was not just reading Vogue and Harper's Bazaar. It was learning about how cotton's grown, and then how it's picked, and then how it's turned into yarn, and then how it's turned into a fabric as such, and then turned into a garment, and then sold on, and learning about every little last step of the process to understand the cost of the goods.
So here you go. This is a process. Like construction, and I'd be interested to know if you even knew this then, or is it one of those moments where you look back in time and think, wow, I was on that journey, that path, but I didn't know it was the right path but the wrong destination?
Yeah, I think that might be what it was. Yeah, I've always been quite procedural, and I always like to know how things work and how things happen. Just even standing outside today before we were set to do this, I was looking up at the apartment complex that's being built to where we are, and I was like, okay, so where have they started here? What did they do first? What's going to happen next? And I'm like, okay, so I haven't done multi-story residential apartments before, so I'm like looking through the barriers to figure out what the boys are doing there and how long it's going to take them to do something. So I like to be that person. I think that kind of ties in nicely with my role at work as well. So yeah, you're on something there with knowing the steps of the process from start to finish.
I love the story. I like diving into the story. So all right, so you realised that fashion wasn't your caper, so you decided to go travelling for a bit.
I actually just stuck around Melbourne for a year. I'd met someone and actually continued to work in fashion, but as a male stylist.
The fashion industry at that time would have been predominantly women working in the industry.
Yeah, it was massively female focused, which is a good selling point for me, because I was a straight male working in a predominantly female focused industry, and it kind of took a lot of people back when I'd walk into class, or I'd be the only guy. I'd be one of 6 guys in the course, and one of the only guys that wanted to kind of really get involved with what was happening in the industry. So that's it was exciting, and I liked the fact that it was breaking, the traditional mold of what someone in fashion would be, and it kind of shocked a few of my mates for a while there. But I think they've come around to it now, because I get the occasional text message going, "Oh, what shirt should I buy for the weekend?" Or "I need to get a suit tailored. Who should I go see?" So it's kind of nice that everyone's kind of slowly come around, especially with, I suppose, the culture in Melbourne as well. I think everyone's a little bit softer than they once were.
So then what? What did you do?
Yeah.
How did you ponder? How did you think?
Well,
what am I going to do?
Mum's always been in, well, as far as I remember, she's always worked for KL, and now she actually is the owner of the business, which we discussed.
Your mum, that was your foot in the door. Your mum worked for KL Modular.
Yeah, that was the foot in the door. But she'd always, just kind of going back a little bit, she's always worked from home for as long as I've known. So whenever I'd get in the car after school, or even going to school in the morning, she'd be on the phone to the electrician or the plumber, yelling at them about something, or kind of going, what's happening here? And when I've been at home to try and ask her a question, she's been in the study working away. So I've always had that construction side of it in the background, and it's kind of always something that's been in the back of my mind. But I wasn't ready to kind of admit to myself that I didn't want the glitz and glamour of working in South Yarra at a big media firm or being a fashion stylist. I didn't want to be a project manager for a construction company at that time. So I kind of pushed back on it for as long as possible, but then the opportunity arose about 7 years ago, and this is where I am now.
Now, your mum, Sue, Tom, she's part of the engine room behind KL Modular Systems. So how did your mum get involved into the company, or what's her background?
She was an office manager at a Montessori kindergarten at the time, and she'd purchased a modular building from KL Modular, as it's known, from the old owner. And he obviously saw something in her and asked her if she wanted to come and work for him. And I think that it was probably time for her to have a career change, and she kind of jumped on board as a sales manager for KL, and the rest was history. She had the opportunity to buy the business not too long, a few years after that, and with a couple of other partners, and that's how we've kind of grown from there.
What sort of position did you take up with those guys at the start?
Well, when I first started, I was actually just doing some part-time marketing for them and helping them out with their Facebook and Instagram and everything else, so email blasts and all that jazz, because it was kind of what I was studying at the time. And I started a little small side business and managed a few social media accounts for a few different businesses just to kind of keep the money flowing, which was nice. And from there, moved into an estimating role, mainly because I felt like when you're starting in a new business, especially in a new industry, I wanted to know every last little bit of the business from top to bottom, so that if someone came over and asked me a question, I'd know the answer. You know, why is this piece of steel here, or what does that bracket do type situation? How much does this cost? I never wanted to kind of go to a meeting and speak to a client and the client go, okay, so if I choose this wall cladding, how much does it cost? And you go, there's no substance behind what you're saying. And I saw that a lot in fashion and marketing. It was very top level, and if there was no depth, then people could just see through you. It was like you're trying to pull the wool over their eyes, because you weren't giving them the substance that they need to convince them that you were true to the product. And that's why now when I speak to clients, or when I'm out at a meeting with a potential client, I can instill a little bit more faith and trust, but instill a little bit more faith and confidence in them that we have the ability to do what they're looking for, because I know what I'm talking about, and we can provide them what they want, essentially, which is why I did the estimating role for a while. And there obviously wasn't any construction manager roles going at the time. And then I moved into project management with the company, and was kind of led by a few of the other guys in the team. And then ultimately now I'm the construction manager for the business.
Now, with estimating any form of modular construction system or any prefabricated system, you really need to have your ducks lined up in a row, don't you?
Yep.
In terms of you're breaking up an entire process into something that is into a fixed price.
Yeah, well, a lot of the contracts we do are obviously fixed lump sum contracts, but with us, it's knowing every last little detail of the build. Because it's a modular building, I can minimise the wastage as much as possible, because I know how many linear meters of steel there's going to be. I know how many square meters of cladding there's going to be. I know every last little bolt or weld or cut that has to happen. And that's kind of the joys of it, because it's not just to get to site and start from scratch and go, oh, I've missed this. It's knowing every single internal elevation, external elevation, blind elevations, and knowing what we need to kind of buy. Because if we don't buy it, if we don't have it in time or in our factory when we're building the building, then it puts us back. The two main focuses for prefabricated modular construction in Australia specifically would be time and cost saving. And if I can't provide the client with a time or cost saving, then what's the point in doing what we're doing? So having to know all of those things at the start means that I can order it early and know what we need, so that we can deliver the project on time and on budget, hopefully under budget.
Definitely, and that's probably the advantage of having a modular business where even though you're building these things off-site, you have that time to gauge out the site, determine what the site conditions are going to be like. You can prepare that site.
Yep.
If there's something not right, you have that time to fix it. Meanwhile, your business is building the product in the background.
Yeah, I think that's the driving factor around a lot of work that we do for councils and education. We come to the site at we survey and understand the site pretty early on in the piece so that we can design the building around it, but we don't actually break ground on the site until a few weeks before delivery, and then stops the disruption prior to that, because we're building the building in our yard. The kids can keep playing on the playgrounds, or the footy club can keep using their oval for as long as they possibly can, and then within a couple of weeks there's a building on their site, and then within a couple of weeks after that we're gone. We could drop a building over a midterm break, and then kids will come back to school and they've got 5 new classrooms to use. You don't see that in situ construction. You take 18 to 36 months to build something, and there's construction workers around there. There's safety factors you have to take into consideration. There's all the finance that needs to go around with it too, and the noise, I suppose, for the kids. So that's the exciting thing. While we're building it off-site and doing all the things behind the scenes, the site that we're going to be delivering the building on hasn't been touched. You wouldn't even know that something's coming there until we actually start laying the foundations or putting the footings in. And that's really close to the time that we actually deliver, which is the exciting thing.
So are you a design and construction system?
Yep. So we like to see ourselves as a full turnkey solution for our clients. We're there from the concept all the way to the handover, which is how we've developed over the last 10 years. We were once just a modular builder where someone would give us a pretty standard portable classroom design, which I'm sure you may have grown up and been taught in. I definitely was out in a public school in Ringwood.
Well.
There's barely any aircon and everything creaked type thing, but that's what it was back then. That's the start of the industry for prefabrication in Australia. We'd just kind of we'd build them in the yard and drop them where they wanted them. We'd be in and out. We wouldn't do service connections. We wouldn't be trying to make them look anything fancy. They'd be quick, easy, cheap, and they'd serve a purpose. But we've since developed, along with the rest of the industry, I suppose, at the same time, into more of an architectural design and construct business as well. We've got a pretty good team of design draftsmen within our team, a nice group of site managers and some great direction for facility managers and things like that. So we can start with the initial meeting with the client and discuss their need and build a building or design a building around that, go and cost it for them. And then obviously they'll need to do their planning, permit part of it, and then we'd come back and sign the contracts if we've won the tender with them or they want to go with us. And
so what if I have a design brief and I already have a design picked out, or I have an architect in mind, can I take my design to you guys and you guys work off those and incorporate those into your process?
Definitely. So that's what we're finding a lot of. We're working with the VSBA at the moment. So the Victorian School Building Authority. They're the people that have given funding to a lot of a lot of schools around Victoria for us, because it's Victorian School Building Authority. We're working closely on that program with a few other modular builders, and initially we get concept designs from an architect. And whilst modular building is quite new in the scheme of things, a lot of the architects don't actually understand how the modularization part of it happens. So we'll get a design and go, okay, well, how would we build this in modular? And that's when we kind of put our overlay on it and send back to them going, if you change these things, this is what we can do to create or facilitate what you're after. And then they make their changes, and then it comes back to us and we just continue on working and make it a modular building. So we can pretty much make anything in modular these days. It's pretty crazy, the buildings that a lot of us are building, and it's exciting as well. So definitely have the ability to build designs that architects have given us, but we always like to have the meetings with the architects as well and give them the limitations, the design parameters that we do have at the same time, because there are some things that just can't be built in modular at the moment, but hopefully one day they will be able to.
Yeah, look, you're in a growing field, and quite a few years ago I made an investment in a prefabrication company, and to see what they have been doing over in Europe for 20 years, like we're dead set in Australia 20 years behind. And there's been quite a few competitors come and go, and was very cutthroat. And now, fast forwarding to 2020, there's a few good competitors that are out there, the survivors, and they're driving this massive shift and change and being able to adapt. And the key out of the whole process for you guys, and you guys have obviously pulled this off, is you need to be able to adapt. And prior to, 4 or 5 years ago, it was fairly limited in you could kind of take a design brief, but we could only make it work so far.
Yep.
Whereas nowadays, you guys and other companies, you're able to incorporate, a normal design, in inverted commas, into your systems and processes and make it work.
Yeah, I think that's the exciting part about the industry as a whole, and where it's going and growing, is the fact that the limitations are getting smaller and smaller. And that's why we're finding a lot of traditional builders, a few traditional builders are kind of making that shift into modular construction as well, because they can see the benefits of what we do and how people are after a more cost-effective solution in an extremely timely manner. And you can probably save anywhere between 40 to 60% of construction time, which is a massively important driving factor. And the sooner, I'm in the industry every day, so I feel like everyone knows about it. And when I talk to people, I just assume they know what I know, because I'm always around everything modular. But you come across a lot of people, a lot of designers that have never really heard of modular or even conceptualized the idea of what modular can be. So
that's a very, very valid point. And that goes back to what I was saying before. They think that you're still restricted.
Yeah.
It has to be a certain size classroom, or it has to be a certain size house, and it's not going to have the same thermal performance that a normal house, or people will be able to tell. But there's so many new systems, and I had a bit of a look at the project that you've been working on, the school project, which we'll talk about soon, and it just looks like a normal building that's been built in traditional means.
Yep. As you look at I go through buildings all the time, and I just go, you wouldn't even know that this was a modular building if you hadn't have seen the process, and if you just walked into a building for the first time. There'd be no factor to show that this was a modular building. It's clad like a normal building. It's troweled like a normal building. It looks like a normal building. It feels like a normal building, but it's not. It's been put here and completed in 6 months, not 2.5 years. So that's the exciting part. And I'm a massive people person, and obviously being someone that hasn't always been in the industry, I love working with principals and board members and people in council that aren't also in the industry as such too much, and to see the look on their face when a building's driving down the road and being craned into site, and then 4 months later I'm handing the keys over to them, just to see the look on their face, to be like, wow, this is incredible what you've kind of accomplished. And I think that's a testament to our company, is the fact that we can build such strong relationships with our clients. We don't do a massive marketing push. We don't spend huge amounts of money on advertising like some of the others do. We're mainly or majorly a referral-based business in the fact that we have such strong relationships with our clients, and they can see how our quality speaks for itself. And I'm not trying to pump up our business more than anyone else, because we're being in such a small industry, we're quite good friends with a few other businesses, and that's what I like about it, because no one's trying to step on anyone's toes. Everyone's kind of understands their field and what their strengths and weaknesses are, and it's exciting as a whole, the industry, to kind of push us all forward, and seeing other people slowly jump on the bandwagon. The early adopters are already here, and we're trying to get to the top of the S-curve to try and get everyone else to join us too. And I think that it will happen. You're seeing all the funding that's being given by state and federal government. You see all the funding that's about to be released in New South Wales as well for a modular school building program. And the stimulus package now post-COVID, you'll see a lot of modular building being pushed through. And even after the bushfires as well, a couple of companies did a fair bit of work up through Gippsland area, just kind of throwing buildings down as quick as possible to help get the local community going again.
Yeah, look, I actually agree with you 100%. And also, just to elaborate on that, what we've seen is a perfect storm in Australia where we had the bushfires, so we lost thousands and thousands of homes. We didn't even get past that before COVID hit Australia. And then immigration has virtually stopped.
Yeah.
So we had a skills shortage pre-COVID and pre-bushfire. And now we've just had this massive injection by both the state and federal governments into providing stimulus packages to keep construction going.
Yeah.
So what we're about to see is probably this massive Australia-wide skills shortage. So when people can't get the right tradesmen or the right builders, what are they going to do? They'll have no choice but to look to people like you.
Yep.
Prefabricated buildings.
And hopefully it's not I have to use modular. It's this is exciting. It's a new opportunity.
Well, this could be your moment, because as we've talked about before, you guys have sort of been a non-traditional form of building in Australia for so long, and you've survived and come through that transition period, the early adopters, as we talked about. And like you said, we're on that S-curve now. So, there's this acceptance now, and then there'll be a desire, and then it'll just
be
continue.
It'll just be standard.
Correct.
Well, that's exactly right, and that's what we're hoping for. And it's not exactly a new technology; it's just a technology that hasn't really been used too much until of late. And that's like what I said just before. Everyone still not everyone, a lot of people still think that portable or modular buildings are the things that are put at the back of schools when they've run out of classrooms.
Yeah, look,
and they're not.
That's just a stigma, and change takes a long time.
Oh, change management is a crazy thing. It's
huge.
A crazy thing.
So what does a typical brief look like with your business? You obviously cover the school market, but do they come to you and say, look, this is what we're after?
Yeah.
Do they have a designer or a town planner that's already been appointed, or how does it work?
It's there's a kind of a multitude. There's a range of different ways that the brief comes to us. Sometimes the schools come to us when they've got a design in mind and they've completed it with an architect, or they come to us with a concept. I'm a firm believer in form following function, especially in the education sector. We're all about
form following function.
The form of the building would follow the function of the building. So we design the building around what it needs to do. So instead of being a crazy over-the-top architectural marvel, sometimes, we just need to make sure the kids have a great learning area. But at the same time,
so you guys go into the detail.
Definitely. We want to know how kids.
How do they teach in this space?
Well, usually when schools are building modular, they're either they're landlocked, or they're running out of space and there's no way for them to kind of build outwards. So they would have to try and use what they've got and find little areas to put things in. So we always look at the transition spaces and figure out how the kids are moving around the area, and understand what the school wants to use as well. Are they an open plan learning type school? Are they using it for certain types of closed off learning? Is it kind of supervised learning? We always try and think about what the building is trying to achieve, so that when we do design it, we're not designing dead areas or areas that serve no purpose. And when people are spending money, they want to make sure that they're getting value for the dollar they're spending. So that's another way that it comes to us. Obviously, we help design it, but a lot of the time, it's a design and construct tender type situation. So they go, here's the Excel spreadsheet, or here's the Word document. This is what I want. What are you going to give to us? And we go away to the team and figure out what we need to do, and come back with hopefully the winning design.
Okay, Tom. Now, I was doing some research and I had a bit of a look online with your business, KL Modular Systems, and Bacchus Marsh Grammar School. That looks like a pretty interesting project.
Yeah, we've had a pretty long-standing relationship with Bacchus Marsh Grammar. We've been working with them for around 15 years now, I think, and we've done a fair amount of work down at their Madingley campus and now also at their Woodley campus. They're an ever-expanding school, and they're a great school to work with, which is awesome, because they love to get our design flair, and also they really know, and they really knuckled down the modular building component of what they want. So we just finished a 3-story 84 module VCE learning center with them, which is the biggest building we've ever done, and it's a figurehead of our kind of business at the moment, just to show that modular can also go up as well as out. So 3 stories in modular is pretty nuts in my opinion, and it's walking through it, you wouldn't even know that it was a modular building. It's that sturdy and strong and robust. Which is
so what's the outside cladding?
The outside cladding for us there was a mixture of CFC and just corrie, a vertically laid corrie, and a few other little design elements, but mainly predominantly corrie and CFC with some louvers and stairwells and things like that to kind of set it off a touch.
So you mentioned VCE. So for those that are listening outside of Victoria, that's basically your last year of high school. So how long did that project take?
From recollection, it was last year now. So we took over the site in March and had to do a full demo and asbestos removal of an existing building that was there on site. So
you do that, like
we
the traditional aspect of building as well. So if there's demolition involved, you guys do that.
We can do it. Demolition, asbestos removal.
And external works as well?
Yep, we do all civil components. And
so
things.
Basically, in a nutshell, KL Modular is basically a builder, but you've got that modular prefabricated element.
Yep, that's what we are. That's exactly what we are. Full turnkey solution. So demolition, asbestos removal, civils prep, building delivery, service connections, and then fit off and handover is what we like to think is the exciting part of our business as well, because it wasn't traditionally what modular builders did. So to be able to say to a client, you only have to deal with us, or you only have to deal with Tom, he'll do everything for you, is a pretty exciting thing for them, because they have to worry about the other things. It's not up to them to manage a build. It's up to them to make sure the kids are learning or make sure that the councils keep running. So it's my problem to deal with, trying to build into existing infrastructure. It's not always easy, but we make it work.
It's about having that can-do attitude, like you just said. We'll make it work.
Make it work.
Now that I know your story, combining fashion with construction, what's the KL Modular System uniform like?
It's professional, but it's nowhere near as intense as working at Hugo Boss.
So no linen shirts or boat shoes?
No. Socks must be worn with shoes at all times at our business.
Safety boots?
Yeah. all steel caps have to be polished before coming onto site. So it's pretty standard for the construction industry.
So looking back, I mean, is there anything that you would change in terms of your career and how you've gone about getting into the construction industry?
I don't have any regrets, and I wouldn't change it as such. I've loved every part of my journey so far, and I think that it's created the person that I am today. But sometimes you do sit there and go, oh, well, it would have been nice to have done a trade, knowing that I was going to be here now. It would have been nice to have, been a chippy or a sparky, or it would have been good to kind of work for a big builder for a few years before coming back to the family business, because I would have had, some more industry insight rather than just working in the family business with mum. But it's every day is a learning opportunity for me, and that's a massive part of my life. I like to think that if I haven't learnt something that day, then it's pretty much a day wasted, and there's always new things to learn in construction, and especially modular construction.
Yeah, and I say this all the time. I mean, because you were a fashionista before that, and you understand that process, like, it doesn't matter. Like, it's a process business, so it doesn't matter where you come from, what sort of background you've been in. It's about having that open mind and having that process brain where you're breaking it up into steps and constantly asking the question, like, what's my role here today? What am I meant to be doing today? And planning it and ticking those boxes and getting the basics right. So in some ways, your own business, it's in the business of building, but you're in the business of putting things together and packaging it up. You're almost in manufacturing and creating something off-site. You actually have another challenge that people probably don't usually think of, which is the logistical nightmare, like completing these projects not only on time and being able to deliver them, but the actual logistics of getting those modular buildings to site and putting them all back together again. Yeah, that would be a bit of a challenge, I'd imagine.
Sometimes it's not as easy as it looks, but it's definitely a massive part, because when you take it apart, and you put it on the back of a truck and you drive it 200 kilometers at 100 kilometers an hour, things move. So when it does get to site, we just we set them down and set it out properly, and sometimes you've just got to pray that go back together the way they were taken apart, and 99% of the time they do. But it does become difficult because you have to figure out and what sort of sequence and what sort of process these buildings are going to be delivered to site, and where are the trucks going to sit, and where's the crane going to be put, and then how do the trucks get out, and who's going to put the buildings in.
What about permits? Like, do you, because you have larger loads, like just getting permits and...
Yep. So we work very closely with a delivery company that we've used for 20, 25 years, and they deal with all the Vic Roads permits that we need. But we also get permits for with our traffic management teams and with council and things like that. But
yeah, so there's a whole... That's another element of
that's a whole nother
logistics.
A whole nother world. And there's just... It, like you said before, everything's a process. Everything's got steps to do to ensure that we get to where we need to get on time. Because as soon as you miss one of those steps, the bottleneck starts to tighten and the timeline starts to get tighter.
Do you break it down into like a certain amount of hours to put together like each module?
Yep. So we know exactly how many modules we can deliver a day. We know how many hours it takes to put a module together. We know how many hours it takes for the guys to drive there and drive home. So every last little detail, I know that, I'll have to book in delivery. The company we use to deliver our modules also delivers modules for other companies and does other work. So if I don't know how many modules they're going to get done, they don't have spare days at the end to go, if you got any left, we can help you out. We have to know every last little hour to make sure that we can even deliver it within the working hours that we have available to us as well. So everything, it's all I've known. So to me, it seems I'm just in my head, I'm just running through the projects I've got going on now going, yep, so that makes sense. But if to someone else coming into the company that hasn't worked in construction, in modular construction before, you go, they might go, what is going on here? But everything's a process, and you always leave a little bit of contingency, but so far so good for us.
Now, outside of work, what does Tom Rolland like to do?
I've spent a lot of time sitting on the couch during COVID, but I'm a massively social guy, and so is my wife. I'm married to a big Italian family, so a lot of our time is taken up with family events, and we spend a lot of time. My dad actually lives up in Yarrawonga now, so I spend a lot of time up at our house in Yarra, visiting the dog that we have, and just kind of enjoying my time, I suppose, with friends and family. That's not much else. I used to play a lot of sport, but had a couple of knee reconstructions with dicky knees, so I don't do that anymore. But so it's mainly just hanging out with friends and kind of trying to switch off, because when you work in a family business, everyone thinks that it's well, not everyone. A lot of people go, it's easy. You work with your mum, or you work in a family business. You're not kind of held to things. But I don't work 7 till 3 or 9 till 5. I was up at 11 p.m. last night shooting off emails, and I was texting you at 9 p.m. going, I'm still working as well. And even when I got up at 7 today, I was straight on the emails. And calling mum on the way to this podcast, it wasn't, hey, how's your morning? It's, have you sent this off to the building surveyor? So it never stops. And the opportunities that I do get to kind of switch off and spend time with my wife and our family, it's great. But yeah, that's pretty much it. A lot of time at the pub, I think, for me and the boys.
So what does the future look like for you and your mum and the rest of the KL Modular team? Well,
hopefully, we always try and think of always shoot for the stars, I should say. I would love for the business to keep growing, and for us to keep winning more and larger projects with more value and more exciting projects and more design savvy projects. So I want to just continue to kind of build that with mum and with the team at KL. I want to make sure that, from where we've started to where we are is such a massive change, and it's happened quite quickly, because for the first 15 years we did the same thing, and for the last kind of 10 to 15 years we've kind of changed quite significantly. I'd like to kind of continue to grow, because it's still a family business. We don't have massive outside investment. It's all kind of run between my mum and her business partner, Jeff, who owns the business with her. And it's, it's always we employ local trades, and we have a massive focus on ensuring that we give back to the local community as much as possible and employ as much local community as possible. So it's still a small to medium modular construction business to compare to some of the other large companies. But I think for us, it's just to continue to do what we know what we can do, and slowly grow and get bigger where we can. And that's kind of what I want to do. Hopefully one day Sue she'll want to retire and actually enjoy her life a bit more, but it doesn't look that way currently because she has trouble letting go. The idea would be to continue on the legacy for her, for everything she's done, and would be to kind of help leave a name for our family name, and for what kind of, I would hate for it to just disappear and us to leave the business and nothing happen to it and just go on to someone else or something else.
Yeah, so you really want to continue that legacy.
Yeah, I don't see myself moving anywhere, and I think that what's really helped to cement that is it's crazy. Obviously, being in a big Italian family now, they have a massive central focus on family, and it's all about family, and we weren't like that growing up. It was mum. She was a single mum raising me and my brother, and we didn't really spend much time. My dad's English, and all of our family is in England or overseas somewhere. In Australia, we don't really have too large a commitment to any of our kind of blood relatives. It's always family and friends. So it was always just kind of us fending for ourselves and hanging out with our family friends, and it wasn't ever really a massive family focus. But now, spending all this time with Kat, and who's my wife, and her family, you can see that there's a huge kind of change in my idea of what I want my future to hold, and I think that building something to be proud of in our family name is what's really driving me. I want to work harder and longer than anyone else that's out there, and I think that hopefully people can start to see that soon.
Okay, Tom, so for the people listening to this who want to get into contact with you guys or reach out to KL Modular Systems, what's the best way to go about it?
Just head to our website, www.klmodular.com.au. You can have a look at the projects that we've completed, and there's been some great ones that have happened over the last 5 years, and have a look at our capacity and what we build. Feel free to shoot an email on the contact page, and we'll get in touch. I'm happy to have a chat with anyone that even wants to talk about the industry in a whole, or wants to talk about potential opportunities for modular constructions.
Yeah, look, I think it's a great thing, and I've really enjoyed getting to know you, Tom, and I think there's some very exciting and challenging conditions coming for the industry in a whole. So I think you're in a really strong position to take advantage of that. And it's been really nice to have you here on Build Hatch, and I appreciate you coming onto the show.
No, thank you very much, mate. It's been exciting, and it's been enjoyable, so I really appreciate it. Thanks again.
No worries. Thanks, Tom. Well, that was another Build Hatch episode with Tom Rolland from KL Modular Systems in Melbourne. What a really genuine and humbled sit down. And I really like how he and the KL Modular System family, they really stick to their purpose. As usual, please check out our Instagram page where you'll be able to learn more about our guests and some of the features of the work that we talk about. Have a great week, and you'll hear me again on the airwaves next week. Thanks for listening to another episode of Build Hatch.
You have experienced a Build Hatch developed production.